Good evening, everyone.
I'm facing the audience.
Welcome to everyone. Thank you for coming this evening. We should have a full evening. My name, if you don't know, is Nancy. I prefer me at Vordtriede. I'm the president of the St. Louis Association. I would like to personally thank our guests this evening, Interim Chief Colonel Michael Stack, Captain Christi Marks, Alderman Tom Oldenburg, State Representative Donna Baringer. I haven't seen her yet. Is Officer Scheifler coming? On vacation. And our safety chair, Tom Scheifler, will be moderating this evening questions with the police department. Just a couple announcements and then we'll get the same roll. August 12th, Rub and Groove is having a free Rub and Groove party and big rubs in the park. So if you want more information on that, it's rubandgroove.org. The funds that are raised for the pig roast will be going back into Francis Park. August 13th, of course, is Rub and Groove. September 2nd is the Gateway Cup. September 17th is Run for the Hills. And the link to register is already out. September 25th is Art in the Park. And October 8th is Brew in the Loop. So our events, whether it's a St. Louis Hills event or a Rub and Groove event or a Friends of Francis Park event, are all starting to gear up. If you would like to volunteer for any of these events, please feel free to email me at president@stlhills.com and I will field the emails to where they need to go. Last, we have membership envelopes at the front table. You can either take an envelope with your check in it and mail it back to us. You can take your cell phones and use the QR code, or you can go to stlhills.com and use PayPal, and also set up an automatic payment for next year. And I also have newsletters in the back if you did not get a newsletter. Everybody in the neighborhood should have gotten a newsletter this go around. And in the newsletter, it also talks about Tom Scheifler's front page awareness, his project, and he's got a poster in the back, which I'm sure we'll talk about briefly. And Tom will talk about tonight the petitions that are on your tables. There's a petition, should be a petition on everybody's table, and a pen. If you don't have one, please share it with your neighbor, because I think we were maybe 2 tables short. So please read. If you have questions, feel free to ask. And then sign it. And again, thank you very much. So I would like to introduce our special guest, Interim Chief Colonel Michael Stack. So I'd like to introduce our moderator. So I don't know how you want to do this.
Give him the
I'll
microphone.
give him the microphone.
Kind of like Donna.
Yeah, exactly. But if you want to have any introductory
Yeah,
words.
just, Colonel Mike Sack, I'm the chief of police right now. The city's continuing their process on a search for a permanent chief. I've been here before. I've come to many of trivia nights, both for Do the Right Thing as well as for my stepson who's graduated from here about 15 years ago. So We never won, but we always had fun. So, but it's good to be back inside the school. Questions?
Yeah, let's, we got a list of questions that we got from members, from residents of the neighborhood in advance, and we sent those to you yesterday, I guess. So we're going to run through those. And before we start those, I want to throw you a softball question, which is, for those of us who get confused, why are you called Colonel and Chief and Commissioner, and what's the difference? What are all those different things?
Sure. Commissioner is a city title. Prior to that is chief, but commissioner is an appointed authority, another title under the city charter. So you have the commissioner of streets, the commissioner of parks, and the commissioner of police. And actually, Fire Chief Jefferson is also a commissioner of the fire department. But there's rank and then there's title. Christi Marks is a captain. Her title is commander of 2nd district. So my rank is a colonel and my title is chief of police.
Good deal. Thank you. All right. So let's dive into the list of questions. The first one that we get repeatedly from residents is, can you share the actual District 2 patrol allocations by day and by shift? If not, why not? And what can you share?
Sure. There are 1,091 commissioned members of the police department of all ranks. And we're divided out into the Bureau of Community Policing, which is the uniform patrol and detectives assigned to the various districts. There's also the Bureau of Investigations, homicide, child abuse, sex crimes, violent arson of them. Then there's also auxiliary services and support operations. So we've got officers divided out across the various bureaus. The bulk of them are in community policing, and the bulk of those are in uniform in the different districts. Each district has a different number, and it's just random, based on however many people are retiring or who graduate from the academy and are assigned out to the district. The 2nd district has 71, I believe it is, officers assigned to it. They're divided out over between their detectives and their line persons. So how many are working on given days or given shifts? We don't release that. It's more of a strategic or tactical thing inside. We don't say how many people we have out there on the street or the policeman sitting. We'd rather just kind of roll out there, do our thing. We're fortunate. I know you've got some technology that you're putting into play here. We also have technology. We've got some crime analysts. They use a variety of different tools available to them. A lot of it is rooted in our police record management system, our report writing system. And they'll track where crimes occur, times of those crimes, and dates of those crimes. And then based off of that, they'll give us mission zones. Your captain and your public information officers may have spoken to you about those mission zones. What those are areas we want to try to push the patrol that we have into there for at least 15 minutes every shift. As cars and opportunities, they roll over and they hit those mission zones so that our presence may be able to kind of curb any criminal activity that might be there. But officers have assigned beats, but if they get a raid assignment, they'll end up leaving that beat if they're called to another beat, but then they should be returning back to their home beat.
So when you say beat, could that be they may leave their district, or they just may be going somewhere else within the district?
Sure, yeah, nomenclature, so, and I'm sorry, I speak.
No, that's
so
okay.
I
That's what I'm here for.
Translate for me, because I don't know what they're talking about. But so you've got, the city is divided up into 6 districts. Each district has 2 precincts, and each precinct has a number of beats. I believe it's usually 9 for every district. So an officer in the 11th precinct would normally stay in his or her precinct for much of the shift, but it's possible due to calls for service that officer may need to leave that precinct and slide over someplace else, but they would be within that district.
Okay. All right. So to be clear, if I asked you how many patrol units will you have out tonight in District 2, your answer is, I can't tell you.
Right, we'd rather not discuss that, but we do have the patrols out there to cover their areas. They've got their assigned beat where they're supposed to be patrolling. As they get radio assignments, they'll respond to those radio assignments, and then they'll respond back. And like I said, we want them to spend some time at a particular mission zone.
Okay, all right. So that's going to disappoint a lot of people here. I know that's what you have to say, but a lot of people here have asked me specifically. So why can't we get this information? And
Right. Yeah.
so the obvious follow-up to that is that the big concern for a lot of people is, how do we know, if we can't know how many patrols there are on a given night or typically on a given week, how do we ever know if it's going down? Because it's on, yeah, if the count, if they cut your resources and you go from, let's say you have 6 patrols typically on a night, and now you're cut back to only 4 patrols or 3 patrols, and how do we ever know that? Because we're not allowed to know how many patrols you're putting out.
Well, I guess we'll look at the total number of officers, but we're not getting cut. You know, we'll have, you know, the city hasn't reduced. I mean, you probably heard a year ago, the city's budget, you know, they came in and they said, well, we're not gonna fund 100 officers or whatever it was. Well, the reality is we didn't have them anyway, so it didn't really matter. But what we do have divided out across the districts, and your number has remained pretty stable. I was started in community police, I want to say it was when I took my edge as a bureau commander, a title. It was October of 21, and I think there might have been 74 at that time or thereabouts. So, you know, it's just a couple fewer than what it was back then.
So you said there's 71 now.
Right.
Is that positions or is that?
That's police officers, individual officers, not sergeants.
Right.
But
is that all those are people are active employees? They're not empty positions. So
right. Those are active people.
How many empty positions are there in District 2 for officers? That you'd like to fill if you could hire someone.
Right. So that's a tough question. So I remember a couple commissioners ago, he wanted to have 100 persons in every district. So, well, I mean, that's not how it really would need to work out. Because you'll have some districts where, frankly, the officers are just going to sit there. Then you'll have other districts where they're hopping from call to call. So you need to put the officers where there's greater calls for service and where it takes longer to handle those calls for service. So there's really no 2 districts that are alike. And so I would never say everyone gets 100. I don't know if there's a big swing from one end to the other end of you know, a high versus a low. Because I think the second might only be like 10% lower than the district that has most officers right now.
Okay.
So, which isn't too bad as we divide that out.
So the best we can do is monitor the officer head count.
Right,
for the district.
that would be there, and that they're being used, and actually, you know, you have to give kudos to your captain because you've got a low attrition rate in the second district. You know, so what that means is that the officers feel appreciated, the officers enjoy their work. So that's good. Some districts don't have a low attrition rate like you have. So, because we're in competition with everybody else in the area trying to hire officers. So you've got good leadership when the officers know that they're supported by their commander and their sergeants, and that the community supports them. And that really does a lot for making them feel at home, and this becomes their home.
All right, so then that's question 1. Question 2, have you been informed of any proposed reduction or reallocation of those 71 officers away from District 2?
So I guess you're referring to the CPE, the Center Police Equity?
That or anything else?
Right, there's no anything else. The only thing I know of is that the CPE, the Center Police Equity, did a study on our department, and they talked about what I just said, where you need to put officers where there's greater calls for service, and where those particular calls for service require more resources than somewhere else. If you get a crime, a stealing or burglary, say a burglary, you'll have an officer respond, an evidence technician respond to that call for service. And then the evidence will go down to the lab and be processed. If you've got a shooting, you're going to have at least 2 officers, 2 detectives, a sergeant, a lieutenant, an evidence technician coming out, and then all that's going to go to the lab. You might have additional officers respond. So you have 2 calls for service, but the 2 very different calls for service, one requiring more resources than the other. So I know that they had mentioned that you need to make sure that you keep districts staffed with adequate people so that you can handle that higher requirement for people, but I haven't been told to move anybody. I moved one person from the first district to the sixth, because he and another guy wanted to switch. But I don't like involuntary transfers. I think it's unfair to the employee, so I wouldn't just snap somebody on moving somewhere else. Now, if there's a problem, then, then that can happen. But I haven't been told to move anybody, and I don't intend to.
Okay, and have you been told anything specific about that study? Has anybody come to you and said, forget about that study, it's not going to happen? Do you have any knowledge that you said nobody's come to you and said, yep, it's coming down the pipe, but has anybody come to you and said, don't worry about it, it's not going to happen?
No, I know that they got a number of recommendations, and whenever anybody gives the recommendations about your operation, if they did some analysis, one is polite, but two, look at what they think. It never hurts to say, do they have something here? Do they know something that I don't know? Are they looking at this differently than I'm looking at it? So I'll look at the recommendations that they have, but I'm not committed to doing all of them or any of them.
Okay, good, thank you. That's question 2. Question 3, ultimately, who decides whether District 2 patrol resources are increased, decreased, or remain the same? Is that you? Is it Director Isom? Is it Mayor Jones? Is it the Alderman? Is it somebody else?
No, that's me. SACK 1959. So I read all my mail. I get mail in there. So no, I would be the one who would decide to decrease the district if I were to say I'm taking 3 people from you, or whatever it would be. So yeah, that would be for me. Now, I would certainly consult with Major Christi, rank, who is the bureau commander title of community places. So she's got all the uniform officers in the department. So I would certainly consult with her, and that's what I did when I was the bureau commander over there. I would say, hey, I could use, here's your classes graduating, could use some here, use over there. Then we would move them. We also have a personnel program called PeopleSoft, and officers can go in there and they can request to go to another district. They can't request to go to homicide. That's some posting inside the department. But if you're in the 5th and you want to go to the 3rd, you go in there and you type that in there. So we'll look at those too. So we want to try and keep our officers happy. If they would like to go to the 3rd, maybe they like the captain there, or they've got some reason they want to be in that district from another district where they're at. I would take that into consideration. But aside from that, I would be the one to make that decision.
So do you report to Director Isom?
Yes, sir.
So let's be clear here. If Director Isom came to you tomorrow and said, I need you to cut budget 10%. I need you to cut your patrol officers 10%. Give me 7 of them, and I'm going to ship them up to a different district. You have the power to say, no, sir, I'm not giving you those 7 officers?
So I know Dan, when he was chief here before, when I was a lieutenant in the 7th district, he ran the Wells Goodfellow grant. And so he picked me to manage the grant out of the district for all different things. So we've been working together for many years. One, I know he would never tell me to do that. He's offered suggestions about doing stuff. I pushed back on some. Others that say that's a good idea, I'm going to look at that. So I don't have all the answers. So I rely on other people around me who are smarter than me, who've done it before, and I listen to them. But in the end, it would be my decision. But he has not said that. I don't anticipate him saying, "Hey, cut this over here and move it over there."
Okay. Let's try turning off the microphone and turning it back on. See if we can get rid of that hum. Try to avoid that for the next 40 minutes. Not happening.
Still humming.
It's the left-hand button.
Yeah.
Does anybody here know the sound system well enough to deal with that hum?
If you turn the volume off, I can talk louder. Is there a way to turn the speaker off?
Do you know where the controls are now?
They're in the room.
In the room? Maybe you can take a peek at that. We'll try to forge on in the interest of time. Okay, so question 4. Do you believe the total patrol hours for District 2 each month should be reduced? Why or why not?
So I'm not sure what they mean by patrol hours. We want the officers to patrol. Are they talking about number of cars or people or?
Let's say total man hours, total person hours.
Well, that's dictated by calls for service. So,
But there's police patrolling whether there's a call for service or not. When I say patrol, meaning they're in the field,
right.
whether
Okay.
whether they're on a
Okay,
call.
when they're on duty.
Yeah, when they're on duty, hours on duty in the field.
Yeah, no, I don't anticipate reducing.
You don't think it should be
You know,
reduced?
the only way for you to reduce that would be to cut the number of people.
Okay,
Because that, if you cut people, then you cut the potential payable hours.
yeah,
For.
okay. And from your perspective, there's no reason right now to cut
Right,
the number of people.
right.
Okay. All right. So every hour of patrol resources eliminated from District 2, every person makes District 2 less safe. Do you agree with that statement? Yes or no?
I would say, and I'm biased as a policeman, is whenever you reduce police resources in any district, you know, you're gonna have an impact on that district.
A negative impact.
A negative, well, an impact, most likely negative. I got here as long as John and some others might have been here, but there was 1,800 people in the department when I got here in '94. So we've been going down, you know, for a number of years. But if you reduce the number of officers in any district, then you're going to affect the ability of that district to do its patrol plan, to handle radio calls, how long it takes to get to a radio call.
Which is the next question, and that is if the resources are reduced, do you expect it will take longer on average for officers to respond to calls for service?
Right, and that's true across the city. As we lose officers, it takes longer for us to get to those calls. And remember, we prioritize the calls that come in. So some might be stacked, if there's a car that's parked in the block that's been there for 3 days and somebody's curious about it. That'll get assigned out to a car, but that officer may not respond there for 4 or 5 hours, not because they're tied up with something, but because it's just not a higher priority. They might be doing patrol, they might be handling a disturbance or something, but they would eventually get around to that at some point on their shift.
Okay, thank you. So overall, for SLMPD, how many patrol officer positions are currently budgeted but vacant?
You know, the exact number I want to say is, I think I did have, we're budgeted on last year's budget, not tomorrow's. So I haven't gone through all that one yet. 1225, and we got 1091. So there's 134. And that's with all ranks. So sergeants, lieutenants.
Yeah,
You know.
okay. Same question for specific to District 2. Did you say all the positions in District 2 are filled, or do you have those numbers? How many are budgeted? How many are vacant?
I don't have what they're budgeted, but I'm confident saying that you don't have whatever is authorized. Because I don't think any district is at full strength as to whatever it's authorized, because we're down 134. Some may be more or less than others. Like I said, you have to give credit to your captain. Her attrition rate is extremely low. Actually, I think it's, looking at it earlier today, I think it's the lowest of all the districts. So a short district too, I'll take that back. Joe Maurice might be leading that. But, so I mean,
Can we loop in the captain if she happens to have that budgeted versus vacant?
I don't know.
Okay, all right. Okay, is there a plan that you can say with confidence will hire and retain people for those vacant positions in the next 2 years? Because we know, I think everybody knows, there's been a lot of effort put into filling vacant positions, and we've been treading water at best for several years, if not longer.
Right, so instead of hire and retain, let's say retain and hire.
Okay, yes.
It's easier to retain somebody than it is to hire. They're already trained, they got the shirts, you know, they know where to stay, they've got it all, they've written a report, they've already gone through the painful process of learning Swift Protect, a new report writing system, as compared to our old system, iLeads. So they're already here, they already know them, so it's easier to retain them. The ones who leave, and I talked to as many as I could when I was in community policing. To be honest with you, they're going mostly because they get better pay in some of these other municipalities. Some of them do go federal, but a lot of them go to some of the different municipalities or even St. Louis County because of the pay. And it's hard for us to compete with what others offer, but remarkably, we had 3 come back last week. We call them retreads. One from Kirkwood, the other one from Maryland Heights, and one from Sunset Hills. The kid from Sunset Hills was there about a month. He handled a couple calls a week, and it was bored out of his mind. So he knew he was taking a pay cut, but he wanted to come back. So he came back. The kid who went to Kirkwood, it was pretty much the same thing. He knew a guy down in the body camera unit, and when he left, the officer at body camera said, I'm not turning this in, I'm gonna set it right here next to my computer monitor. And the kid from Kirkwood said, I'm not gonna need that back. So sure enough, he came back last week. He was gone 1 month. 1 month. So he came back, and sure enough, he went in there to get his camera back. And the officer just held it up to him, so he got his camera back. And we got 3 more as of today, just this week, that are coming back. And they're talking about how in St. Louis County, you might work 5 or 6 or 7 days straight, but you're not necessarily working with the same people the way that their schedule is structured. So it was a gal, she was saying that there's really no camaraderie like there is here. When you come to work at 6:50 in the morning or 11:10 at night, and it's the same 6 or 8 people. You ride with them all night or all day. They're your backup, you're their backup. There's a lot of camaraderie, there's a lot of family there. I think there's a lot of guilt when these kids leave because they feel like they're abandoning their buddies. But when they do come back, they're really excited to be there. So there's 3 last week, and we've already got 3 this week. We got up to the class or something. I anticipate we'll get them out by the end of July. So we are losing some folks. So retention is a big thing, and like I said, a lot of it has to do with pay. What's the difference?
Yeah, my understanding is the county pays the starting salary 15% higher,
About 10 grand a year or something.
about 10 grand a year
So,
over
now-
the city.
And then that cuts both ways. So like a lot of the munis, if you go out to some of those, could be like that, but there's really no overtime. So there's not much what we call secondary. You get a side job working at Ted Cruz or the beauty or something like that, and make additional money. I always remind people we're fortunate as police officers. You know, if we, with our family, decide we want to earn some extra money, we got the ability to do it. You know, my wife's an accountant, you know, where do you go to get a second job? H&R Block, you know, it's not really what she wants to do. So we're fortunate we're able to do that. But the kids who go to these communities, they realize later, hey, they get my time back, but my lifestyle's different because I'm not earning as much as I have in the city doing fun things that they like to do. But yeah, a lot of it's about that. It's about $10,000 for these officers.
And for those of you who have seen the petition that's on the table, the last item is about pay. And it may be striking to you to read that and say, the petition is requesting a 30% pay increase for our police. Well, if you take into account that they're paid 15% less, and given what they deal with, should be paid more than what the county makes, that 30% isn't all that unreasonable, especially again when you know that their starting salary is 46,000. So asking for a 30% increase isn't giving them $100,000. It's trying to just make it above what the county is so we can retain
Right.
officers. So that leads to the next question.
Yeah, and I just want to wrap up. I think we talked about this a few minutes ago. So Kirk Fritz is the chief out of St. Charles. So he's out of St. Charles. So he's a former county captain, real nice guy. He's a helicopter pilot. It's Wayne pilot, real cool guy. I ran into him at an FBI meeting and he said, hey, sorry, this is not was a major. He goes, but whenever I have an opening out here, I'm gonna hire nothing but city officers. He came from the county, but he wants us. You know, so that speaks to the quality of officers that we got here in St. Louis. You know, they're competent, they're capable, you know, they work hard, they learn a lot here in the short time that they may work here. So he's trying to steal all they can from us. So, I mean, that's really kind of the jewel that we all have. So, you know, if we can retain them, that would be huge. And as far as recruitment goes, you know, residency was one thing, but the other thing would be the pay. If the pay were up, that would help us recruit because we're in competition with the highway patrol. St. Louis County, St. Charles, the NGA, I was told a few months ago, they want to hire 60 people, officers to work on their federal protective service. And guess who they want? You know, they want St. Louis City officers. So they're trying to recruit from us. They're on a, as opposed to being out in the community, they're kind of a bunker mentality, but they're looking to hire from us as well. So we got a lot of competition we're trying to deal with, but we've got things that you can't put a dollar sign. You know, the camaraderie that these officers have with one another, the relationships that they have with people and businesses in the community, and their leadership in the district. You know, you can't quantify that. So you got a lot of officers who stay here regardless, or who come back, like I was just saying, because of that. And they know they're taking a pay cut to come back here and put on a blue shirt, and they're proud to do it.
So back to that question is, can you say with confidence that the current plan or some plan in the works will fill the vacant positions in the next 2 years, or are we going to just continue treading water?
Well, I mean, it's hard to say. Like I said, the big thing that I have no control over is the pay. But I was talking to the director earlier today at a meeting and talked about what I want to do to try to reach out into some different organizations in the community through liaisons and try to, you know, attract people to be police officers. You know, we've got, you know, immigrant population. We got Russian officers here, Bosnian officers, Hispanic officers here. Second generation, the parents came here, actually first, when they were kids, they came here to St. Louis, to the International Institute. So that's one opportunity. Another one is through veterans. You know, so we've got a number of veterans in the department. We've got a number of folks who are currently deployed. I think Captain Marks is a couple who are currently deployed. So not necessarily overseas, but they're activated somewhere here, possibly stateside. But there's another pool of people who are familiar with service, and they may be out of the military looking for something to do, and we're hoping that we might be able to tap into as well. But you know, we've got, you know, ideas about what we might do. The traditional setting up a booth at a university doesn't, you know, really net the numbers, you know, that we've seen before. We'll still go to some of those, but I think we're going to try and push it into these other venues. We might have a better reach and a better response.
Okay, so I'm
going
to put you on the spot here because I want these people to know what the takeaway is on this. And to me, what I'm hearing, correct me if I'm wrong, the takeaway I should walk out of here with tonight is there's no plan in place that anybody has confidence in that will they'll fill the vacant positions. Nobody can say, you know what, that's my job and fire me in 2 years if it's not done.
I mean, they can fire me in 6 months, and pick somebody else, but no, I've got an idea about what I want to do, and I've started to meet with folks about how we can try and make that happen. I've talked to the mayor, told her the importance of the pay raise. I talked to the director today about the importance
of a pay raise. You know, the bonus is a great idea, a way to get around, actual salary increase. It's non-pensionable, so there's no cost to the city in that payment either. So, I think we can make something happen. It's just a matter of getting, the city government to, say, hey, we're going to pay first responders, us, our civilians are in the same boat. We've got folks who are highly skilled, working at lab, our crime analysts, our IT section, who are underpaid compared to others in other industries or in regular business. So, we struggle trying to retain them and to hire them. So I'm working now with the interim director Moten from the Department of Personnel to rewrite, some of the standards and job requirements. I can't do the classification, that's done. But he said I can make some recommendations on this stuff to make it easier for us to try to hire and train civilian staff. So I'm hopeful that we can get that to turn around. But it's just going to take an effort between, the city with pay and us with being creative on how we can hire people. And, retention also comes back to leadership in the districts. Officers feel appreciated by the commanders, they feel supported by the commanders. They're more likely to stay because they feel part of the community, the people that they encounter.
So it sounds like pay is top of the list for your concerns about retain and hire.
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing directly from the officers who I talk to when they leave. It has primarily to do with the pay.
So if that's the number one barrier to hiring and retaining highly qualified personnel, what are the specific steps to address that? Because there's so many people saying, well, who can do that? Does the union have to be involved? Does the mayor, does the alderpersons? Describe for us, if somebody said today we're going to increase pay, could that just be done with a signature? What are the steps?
It would have to be part of the pay ordinance. So the Board of Alderpersons would have to craft an ordinance designating, whatever the pay raise would be. Remember, we've got pay parity with the fire department. So where they have parity with us. So if we get a raise, we've got to give firefighters a raise as well. So it's not just, you're giving us $10, you got to give them $10 too, or whatever it comes out to be. So somebody would have to craft an ordinance. They have to get enough votes on the board and show more DNA that there's funding for it, and then have it signed off. But that's all out of our control. I asked for it. I asked for supplemental budget. I had when I was in professional standards and community policing, asked for items in the budget. Sometimes we get it, sometimes we don't. It's just how the budgets work.
So you're saying the Board of Aldermen tomorrow or whenever the next in session could pass an ordinance that raises the pay for officers. It would just have to include fire personnel as well.
Right, and they actually did that. The budget that was signed in, I think today or yesterday, gave a 3% pay raise to all city employees and a $2,000 bonus. The bonus comes at the end of July. The pay, I think, comes the first or so of July. So officers will, and civilians, not just in the police division, but in forestry and everywhere else, will experience a 3% pay raise. And that's how it's done. The Board of Aldermen craft the bill, they debate it, they find the funding for it through their budget, and then they pass the bill and it gets signed off. And then at that point, we will get a raise. So if they, instead of saying 3, if they said everybody gets 3, but police and fire get 10, then we would have gotten 10.
So we're gonna take a side step to clarify that process with Tom Oldenburg if he's here. My understanding is if the Board of Aldermen passed that, the mayor could veto it unless you had a veto-proof majority. Is that correct?
Well, you should teach civics. That is correct.
What's the 2/3?
Yes, 2/3 of the current city aldermen. 20. Fight if there's vacancy, 20 votes override.
Got it. Thank you. All right. All right, back to you, Colonel. According to a recent Post-Dispatch article, police resources are getting reallocated to patrol activity of minors downtown who are apparently causing distress in the downtown area. Does District 2 have reduced patrols currently to facilitate the increase in patrols downtown?
So those things occur, not just that, but these guys going out there in their cars doing sit-outs and burnouts and all that kind of stuff. Those things predominantly happen on the weekends. We've gone to 12-hour shifts on our afternoon watch. So officers come in at 3 p.m., they work till 3 a.m. Those on the night watch come in at 7 p.m., they work till 7 in the morning. So what that does is it gives us extra staff in between 7 and 11. So those officers in their districts hit their mission zones, like we talked about earlier. The 4th district, they handle the downtown area. They also have the bikes that work down there. They got a squad in the days and squad in the afternoons. Then we got mobile reserve, which is a uniform group. SWAT is a uniform group. Anti-crime and our drug interdiction unit. And so they're all kind of split up and they work on the weekend, either hitting mission zones in the districts or going downtown when they're needed downtown. So, but that I know of, no one's been pulled out of South and North Patrol to go downtown. But if an A call comes out, I fully expect them to come. So,
Sure.
So they would go to that.
Okay.
And those things do occur. I remember as a young policeman, we had a riot that there's an outdoor concert up there, 1100 North Broadway. Oh my gosh. But it was a citywide aid call. It was a nightmare. But for the most part, it's just the districts with this extra staff and then those specialized units that work weekends on those 12-hour shifts as well than staff.
Okay, so I'm gonna put Captain Marks on the spot and say, can you confirm what we're hearing and that the patrols that are going around District 2, the resources, you haven't reduced any of the resources in order to fulfill the additional hours downtown?
Wait, there is, I forgot, there is the one person from each district. Is that what it is?
It used to be 2 in years past, but they decreased it down to just 1. So
Yeah.
when we have afternoon watch working 12 hours and night watch working 12 hours, giving up 1, and they have cut it in half the amount we've had to in years past. So that really doesn't affect our staffing now through the summer, just giving up 1 person.
Yeah, I forgot about that. So we have, I forgot, thank you. That's the cruising detail. People, they still cruise. Those of you who remember it from back when I worked, you might have driven. These people still cruise, they block the streets, different than the sliding group. So we used to have 2 officers from every district go downtown, block streets and that kind of thing to kind of prevent, mayhem. But this year we cut that down to 1 officer per district, so that would only be 6 people that would be working it, and the sergeant comes from like professional standards, the academy or the lab or internal affairs or something. And we usually don't come from the line platoons.
Okay, thank you. You mentioned earlier about secondary duty and how that's more available to the officers in the city than the county. And for those of you that don't know, secondary duty is that when they're not actually working for the city, they can work what's called secondary duty for security in a neighborhood. Central West End does this, other neighborhoods do this, or at an event, a special kind of event. So, and businesses like Lowe's or Walgreens does this. So KSDK recently reported on the plans by Crown Food Marts to use police officers for secondary security duty at their stores. Do districts have reduced patrols to facilitate this and other secondary duty security?
So the short answer is no, but there's more than just, I was Vince Klein, a retired officer. He poured a concrete pad for me behind the house on the street here. So it's not just security. Some guys do, they fix computers. But there's a variety of different things that officers and civilians can do outside of work. Obviously, you can't do it while you're working, but most of us work as, like you said, in the uniform capacity. So if they worked at the gas station, That would be while they're off duty, so it wouldn't reduce the number of officers in the district. And in the long run, it would probably help the officers in the district, because if something happened there, that officer writes the report. So instead of 226 getting called to the scene and come out of service for 2 hours to book somebody and write a report or whatever it may be, they just go there, assist, and then they're done. So it's secondary is really a good thing. You've got them in a lot of bars and restaurants where they're watching cars. On the parking lot, I used to do it at Hodak's for many years. They rarely had a car broken into because they had one of us, walking through the parking lot. So that reduces crime in the neighborhood. People feel safe when they come in and out of the restaurant. Get your neighborhood restaurant having a large influx of patrons. I remember many people coming in saying, I used to come here 30 years ago, and now they're out in town somewhere. But they enjoyed coming down. So, you can maintain that if officers are working secondary, different districts, different businesses within that district.
All right, thanks. Next question is about neighborhood crime fatigue. And that's when a neighborhood when neighborhood property crime, when the property crime in a neighborhood becomes increasingly common, residents become less likely to report crime incidents. Do you believe that's a thing, that's real, or do you believe that's bunk?
I had not heard that before I read the question. And about 2 weeks ago, maybe last time I was at a community meeting for Alderman Hubbard up in the 6th district off of West Florissant there, past the Calvary. And the folks who lived on Thecla and Era and Lucille, the names familiar to Captain Marks, because we had about 3 homicides up there within a week, and they were kind of tied together. But at the community meeting, they were just so complaining. They hadn't given up. They're like, hey, we need the limbs in the alley cleared by forestry so we can put up some pole cameras. They're calling officers when they think they see things that are suspicious. God bless them, most of them were older than me, and they were feisty. They're like, I don't want these people on my block telling me stuff or whatever. But they didn't give up at all. They were very much calling the captain, calling the district, calling 911, because they know when they call, they're going to get a response. They came to me, and we did a blitz up there a couple of weeks after that. It was last Wednesday, was the ones at 9, and folks were outside on Lucille and Era. They were cleaning up their property. We were there talking to folks. We had some cars and derelicts that we had towed that were just abandoned, so we hooked them up and took them away. So. No, they were very much engaged. I hadn't heard of that term before, but
so
I think it depends on the character of the neighborhood.
Yeah, I'm increasingly hearing people when they say, oh, my car got tossed last night. Did you call that in? No, that's not worth the trouble. I'm starting to hear a lot more of that. And you're not hearing that kind of thing from the circles? You're in?
So not the circles I'm in. Like I said, I had not heard that term before, but in my experience, I had not heard that. I would encourage people, I always encourage people to call, because it's when you call, and that's where our crime analysis come in to shine, because they start picking locations. Hey, this is happening right over here, right about this particular time. And so now that leads to information that, the detective sergeant back here and his crew can use to try and figure out what's going on, along with any people who might have witnessed something, or a vehicle, or a camera that might be available. So when people call, that you can get your breaks.
And to make the plug here and the connection, SLMPD is a data-driven organization, meaning you guys, among other things, look at calls for service to figure out where patrols should be and where your focus should be.
Right.
So if people don't make the call, you don't have the data to say, we should be focusing more on this area.
Right, so when a call generates a report and it's determined that a crime occurred, the officer writes a report. The records management system is the source that the crime analysts use to say, right over here in this block, during these particular hours is when you're having problems. And that creates the mission zone. And that's when Captain March shows up and sends messages out to our officers. hey, there's a new mission zone this week, and it's over here. It's based on this crime that's been reported. So that information is important to us. Long time ago, some folks who worked here, they had the phone on the pole, John. So that preceded me, but so back then, that you get your call, you go walk off to it, and then how do you tie things together? Now with technology, so much can be done. We're just touching the tip of the iceberg here, figuring out what we're able to do with the information that we're collecting.
Good, and to connect the dots one more time, the CPE study that the captain mentioned, that the colonel mentioned earlier, which is a study that recommended District 2 should reduce their police officers. That study came to that conclusion based on calls for service. There weren't enough calls for service in our district compared to other districts to justify the level of staffing that we have. So if we don't make the call, we're just shooting ourselves in the foot. Correct?
Well, I mean, not just calls for service, it's the actual crime, because we might get 6 calls for service on the same car that's on fire. All you see it, you see it around the corner, it's in front of your house, so another 6, we get shootings, there might be the lieutenant from the 5th District 911. You might get 8 calls for service, and what does the supervisor say? Do all those calls into this one and give me one complaint number for this shooting, because all the neighbors call me then. We want that because each neighbor saw it from a different angle, and they all may have some different information. It ties up the line, but the information is important. But there's one report written out of that, and that's what crime analysis uses to create those zones, and that's what we base our signing up people to.
Now, I'll double check my own knowledge on this, but my reading of the CPE study was it was literally calls for service, not incidents.
And that might be their recommendation, but on my experience, I mean, you can have 30 people on the block calling the same car on fire.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that you need 3 officers in that area.
Yeah, and I agree. What you're saying,
Yeah.
what you're saying makes sense to me, and that's why I'll double check, because if the study really was calls for service, that could be a flaw in the study, in my opinion.
It may be whatever they're counting.
Yeah, all right. Is there a plan in place to stop the vehicles that are racing on Jameson and the modified exhaust systems that are designed to sound like gunfire?
So as far as, traffic enforcement, every district has 1, if not 2, high accident locations where they focus on traffic enforcement. So, I mean, what was it, like Chippewa, Jameson, or Hampton,
Chippewa, Manchester, McCree, and Kings Highway, and Manchester.
Could you repeat that for the audience, Colonel?
Kings Highway, Manchester.
Kings Highway, Manchester, Kings Highway, and McCree, and Hampton, Chippewa.
Kings Highway, McCree, Hampton, Chippewa. So when we go there, and that's where they have the most accidents, and when people have an accident, somebody can get hurt, obviously there's going to be some property damage. So you take 1 if there's somebody injured, 2 if there's a car blocking the street, 2 officers out of service, and then they write that report. So that takes 1 of them out of service for an hour or 2. The report's got to get reviewed by a sergeant. It takes them out of service for a half hour. So if we could put officers on self-initiated activity, so I'm choosing to do this now. I'm going up there at 8:30, I've got time, there's no calls. I'm gonna sit here, I'm gonna write some tickets for people running this red light. That's different than, hey, come here, go there, go to the other place. So if we could take our free time and do that and reduce the number of accidents there, that's less time, we're out of service when we don't have any choice but to go. If that makes any sense. So I would rather have an officer use their own free time to go up there than have it dictated to them because there's an accident and they gotta go, you gotta be here for 2 hours. So they find time during their shift, and it might be even some of the people on their key platoon that have more freedom than others on the line platoon. They can go up there, they can write some moving violation tickets
related to those locations and see if we can get a reduction in the number of accidents. Even if people say, man, there's always a police car sitting there. I'm not gonna run this light, or another one, I won't, maybe I'll roll a stop sign, but they won't run that light. So we can reduce the number of accidents. We may not have somebody seriously hurt, somebody doesn't have to get their car hurt. How many of you have been involved in an accident, somebody without insurance? So that never brightens your day. So we can reduce those. We also buy back all of these hours that these officers take working the scene. So that's where we put our resource, traffic enforcement. As time permits, we can go to other locations, like what Jameson, but it's all dependent upon available patrol time. So it just depends on what they have time to do, what they can fit in. And as far as the mufflers, it sounds like gunfire. I hadn't heard that before now, but I imagine that would be some noise that we should. But again, we're prioritizing stuff. We got a lot of burglaries, some residential area, people are at work. Only got cars flying out Jameson. We're gonna be in a residential area, where people are at work, they left their homes, locked the doors, so we can try and prevent burglary. So it's a matter of trying to spread out the resources, hit those things that are higher priority.
Again, I'll put Captain Marks up to say, is there anything you want to add to that, since it's a very local issue?
Jameson has been, last year, I know, we talked about Jameson numerous times. Scheifler was there in the past, Scheifler up there in the past, I put my deep up there. I put track, as when up before we started the high accident intersection location, I put traffic up there. I've done multiple things. I know the previous captain did multiple things on Jameson. Unfortunately, sometimes it hasn't stopped being done, and we've addressed Jameson for years. Pretty much unless you have traffic there every day, I don't think it's gonna stop. But this is just an idea you make for your own person. What I've seen when I, at work, several times, there was always an issue on Natural Bridge. Now they have constructed Natural Bridge, you can really not see very well and fly down Natural Bridge anymore. And it works. So you may want to ask your own event to take a look at maybe repairing Jameson, because I think that's going to cost.
You start down there on Fair, like this Western Fair, you go all the way up to past Marcus to Kings Highway there, like the White Castle. I was up there, it's like 8 lanes wide. I don't know how many bay lines we had. It's flying up there. They get some portion side streets. But they've done a remarkable job of traffic. But I mean, certainly.
Yeah, it's okay, Tom. There is a study right now on the. So there's a study right now that's finalized. Looking at how we fix stick it up. There are street resources. Softball.
Well, that service, because, you know, that thing never takes a holiday, right? That and it actually looks nice up there on that bridge. Somebody might go up there and take some pictures. But it's not pretty. This would be happy. But it looks great, and it will slow things down. I don't know, I was driving up there a week or so ago. One won't quit. Well, it could. So, but traffic didn't move. So if you can have some kind of physical fix for it, then we don't have to staff it, and those officers to go do something different.
Last question here, I think we have time for, is about crime statistics. For nearly 2 years, the police crime statistics page has stated, quote, "We anticipate this being a temporary fix until we can get the public portal completed." For 2 years, it's been a temporary fix. When will it be completed so residents can again have access to the raw data files of specific incidents?
Who here works in IT? Anybody ever have to deal with IT? So about 3 years ago, we bought a new records management system. Welcome, Director, how are you doing? So, Director Donna, we looked at a number of different companies, and we ended up going with somebody that does Swift Protect. Now, this report writing system touches everything in the department, right? It touches CAD, expansion. So you call in and say that you've had a burglary, and I draw a complaint number, it pre-populates part of the first page, my police report, with, you know, the 10-digit codes. You've got, you know, the longitude, latitude, the address, the time, my beat car, my precinct, my name, it's all over. So the RMS touches CAD, it touches that. If there's an arrest on this, it touches our booking module. It touches everything in the department. And it's not easy, and it doesn't necessarily talk to anything else. And if anybody's dealt with IT, they'll tell you this thing will work like a charm. We got lots of clients, big clients, but big clients, and this thing works great. I just had a meeting with somebody yesterday, just saying that we got a large client, California, mid-sized one, and I don't know if you were there, there's mid-sized one, Florida. So we're working with utility. We got another thing called live scan, part of our process. We have seen some of the lawsuits that we've been involved in, where we release the wrong person. Process, that's good. And we track those folks at the Justice Center by literally stating on a plastic armband on their wrist and writing the number on it. Now, if the copper's not paying too much attention, puts it on 2 blues, the guy's kind of sweaty. And you're just wondering here for some burglary, and I did a robbery, I might talk to you to switch armbands. Then when it's time to go, I get to go. So now we're trying to cross-check the fingerprints, but that's not always quick. But now we got a thing called lives. How to control this question. It's actually great. And it's just a piece of plastic for the grocery store. And so when it's time to release that fingerprints on it, doesn't matter if something. Listen, it matters what shows up here. So this is what so we've been working for more than 2 years to try to get all of these things to talk about. Our body cameras is another one. In the middle of all this, the city-wide body cameras are important. They're good. I love them. They reduce a lot of complaints. They're great for evidence. But now we had to work with facility to get a quick fix to get this to go, so everything else got put on the side. So we are working with a vendor. It's an IT issue. You know, it's not money, you know, it's a budget, they're working on it. But it's just a matter of how long it's gonna take them to get it to go. You can still go through the public portal and get general information that's in there, but not the detailed stuff that you probably know.
Correct, yeah, and just to put a bow on that, since I am in IT, what I'm hearing is it's a matter of priority, because everything I know says it's dead simple to do what I'm asking about. It's just not important enough compared to all the other things that you talked about that need to be done.
Right. So our booking module, getting the information out so people can look at it is important to us. We get reporters who come in, they'll make some check request their data, and our sunshine unit will release that to them. But when it comes out to it, we gotta have live scan work, we gotta have a booking module work. The information that's originally when we got body cameras, and it didn't dump information into the report. So God bless the police officers, for about a month, they had to go in and manually enter the 10-digit longitude, latitude numbers their page number, their precinct number, their name, their date, guess. It's hard to misspell second, all right, but here, Sergeant Derek Walls, I'm sure. It's easy to hit that C twice. So they gotta type all this in, it's gotta be right. So, but there's an IT fix for it.
Yeah.
And pushing information out is important, but not as important as getting this body camera tied into the records management system. So we had the correct video, tied to the correct report, so the circuit attorney can view the video.
Well, good.
That makes sense.
That exceeds the time that we had allocated for tonight. So I want to have everybody, big round of applause for Colonel Sack. Thank you very much. Appreciate your patience with answering all these questions and not a single drink of water, which I couldn't have done.
Oh, no,
Oh, have you? Oh, well, good, good. I must have been drinking the same time. Sorry, we don't have time for audience questions tonight. We had a lot of questions come in ahead of time. If you still have a question that you're burning to ask, if you can't catch Colonel Sack here before he leaves tonight, you can try and catch me and I will try and relay that if you don't want to go try to find him directly and try to get you an answer. So thank you again very much.
you're welcome.
Thank you.
Next, I'd like to recognize retired Lieutenant John Harper. Jim Rosado.
Good, and I would be remiss in not offering Director Isom, Safety Director Isom, an opportunity to say a few words if you'd like, sir. You can certainly turn it down.
Appreciate it. Perfectly all right for Colonel to take the hot seat today, so I appreciate everything he's done answering your questions, but I really don't have a lot to add. I think he did a great job of answering your questions. I will just say that, we're working hard to address public safety in every part of this city. And it really does take a creative mix of ideas and deployment of officers. So we're always thinking about ways in which we can improve what we're doing. We are moving not only officers around your district, but we have specialized units that are coming in, out of the second district. We're constantly deploying different places. And I would just reemphasize what the moderator said is that the information from the public is what we use to create our strategy. So whether it's here or throughout the city, we need the information so we can be as precise as possible. I'm sure Captain Marks, I get on her nerves and other captains in the city, but but we are trying to be as precise as possible. So I will say is that more officers are always better, but using the officers you have in the most efficient way is best. Because you're not going to always have 2,000, 3,000 officers. You have what you have. You have to do the best you can, using the data and using the information you have, and putting people in places where you think it's more likely for us to deter, solve, or prevent crime. So that's what we're doing. So we love the feedback. One of the reasons why we put this report out is because we don't surprise people. We want to be transparent, and we want people to see what we're doing and what we're planning. We don't have any plans right now to take any officers out of the district, but I would be quite honest with you, if we had more officers, we would increase the number of officers in other districts before we increased here. Simply because what he's stating is true. Captain Marks does a great job, but the fact is that the second district is a low-stress district. Thankfully, the other districts are very high-stress districts. And that does have an impact on attrition. You're in a district that's running call to call, very high crime, you tend to have more turnover. And so we could reduce turnover in those districts if they have more resources. And they weren't, so we're running from call to call, dealing with that stressful situation. So if you have more questions, more comments, we'd love to hear them. Captain, Colonel, you're doing a great job. Thank you for all your feedback.
So, everything I heard tonight, you can correct me or think differently, which is fine, but from everything I heard from our officials is consistent with the petition that's on the table. So I didn't hear anything that said they wouldn't support this petition. Now, I'm not going to put them on the spot and say, do you or don't you? But what I heard was they believe what's consistent with the requests that are on the petition. So I would ask everybody here to look at that petition on your table, if you haven't already, and seriously consider signing it. All right? If you have any questions about doing that, feel free to grab me and talk to me about it. But that's my request for you tonight. And FYI, that petition was reviewed by the St. Louis Hills Neighborhood Association Board and approved by the board for distribution here tonight. So it's got their blessing to distribute and support. All right? So trying to keep on schedule. Should I hand it to somebody or do you want to talk?
Captain Marks, would you like to say a few words? I just want to say, super quick, the follow-up on when I was here in April, the last time I met with this group. Hello? 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 No?
No? Oh, there it is. All right. Some of the things that, the main two things I took away from April that we were talking about were, what are you doing about all these people driving around late at night, in the middle of the night in our neighborhood, jumping out of cars, running around, trying door handles and breaking in our cars? Remember that conversation? And what am I doing about it? Well, since April, I have given in my patrol plan very specific directions that go out every week that says after dark, when you're not on a radio assignment, after 3 a.m., everybody for 9 weeks, guess where they went? They went to St. Louis Hills. And you know what happened? Crime went down 2% every week since. Larcenies for motor vehicles in the last 14 days, down 25%. In the last 30 days, down 33%. And year to date now, you are down 35%. So putting the officers, as they said, where the crime is and flooding that area, it worked. So thank you for asking me to do that, because we did it. And the colonel sees every week when he was the colonel over the Bureau of Community Policing, he was copied in on my patrol plan every week. And he saw my numbers. I would give him the stats of my 8 most prominent crime neighborhoods. And we watched your neighborhood go down 2% or more every single week since the last night I met with you. That is what I was supposed to say. Also, the second biggest complaint was, what are you doing about all these cars with no plates or expired tags? Remember that one? I got a lot of that. Well, guess what we did? We went out and we wrote lots of parking tags for expired plates or no plates. And my officers were very busy. They wrote 122 parking tags just for that alone. Now, I had to make a special request from the parking division to get me those stats, and they had to run it multiple times, but they finally got them to me right before this meeting. So they did what you asked, and I hope you've seen the difference, and I hope you've seen the officers, and I hope on your ring cameras that you will send me these videos of these kids that used to be rolling around. I haven't seen a whole lot of those videos by email anymore. So thank you, and thank my officers next time you see them, because they're really responsible for that. They did an excellent job. So they listened to you. Thank you for telling them. I got one last thing, and then I'm done. We have seen a tremendous increase in cars being stolen that are Kias or Hondas. If you own one, or your neighbor does, or anyone in your family does, I ask you to join the club and get a car club. The 5-Star Senior Center on Arsenal does sell them for only $15. Officer Salem, if you are on the St. Louis Hills Neighborhood Group, and you get his weekly crime updates, they're attached to that as well, and I also have some back on the table. So please, if you have a Hyundai or a Kia, we are finding out they're very easy to pop that ignition, even some of the newer ones. So please spend a $15 investment, please, to keep your car from getting stolen. And that's all I have.
Thank you. And once again, I want to thank the chief and the director for coming, and the captain too, and Tom for moderating, and I hope you get to have a drink tonight. It's not a little tough. Anyway, so we're gonna run out of time relatively quickly. So Alderman Oldenburg, would like to come up and say a few words. State rep, and both can come up and talk at the same time. Whoever's got a. Thomas won't talk. No, I think he's afraid he's going to ask questions.
Good evening, I'm Donna Baringer, the executive state representative, and normally I'm here before the actual meeting starts. Tonight, I actually went to an event downtown because if you get my electronic newsletter, we'll find out that the bill I passed, House Bill 1606, it was signed by the governor on Wednesday. It was in Jefferson City. And if you don't know what that bill is, I talked about it this meeting before, and it comes down to public safety. That is because we have so many vacant, derelict, abandoned, privately owned properties in the city of St. Louis. We have 25,000 vacant properties. We have 15,000 that are privately owned. What does that mean? It's in 20 years, 30 years, trees are growing out of them. Why is it like that? Because in the city of St. Louis, many of you may or may not know, we have these offices called county offices. So it's a revenue county, sheriff's county. What does that mean? That means they can only change their process procedures through state statute. So if the sheriff's office needs anything, the courts need anything, the revenue needs anything, the treasurer needs anything, clerk needs anything, we have to pass legislation for them to do anything in Jefferson City. That's why we kind of, they get really tired of us. But I explained that. And I explained that it took all of these offices, it took a big group, they got together, the lawyers, the school law group, all came together and made this process so they can finally clear title, so that we will no longer be sending firefighters to homes that are in bad shape. They will get hurt when they go there, but there's a house right next door has people living in it, they have to go. Those are the houses we're talking about. We are talking about the dangerous houses where children are pulled inside and they are molested. So this is a public safety effort. So I am so excited, and so we had a big thing tonight, and it was great. It was not easy to pass anything at the state level, but we were able to do it, and it will help the city of St. Louis. It will help us be able to develop areas that are in huge flood. On that same note, because of all the different things I've worked on in Jefferson City since I've been there, the new Speaker of the House has put me on a task force. My job between now and December is to come up with other people, there's 6 of us on this committee. We are to come up with legislation that will address crime. And the reason we were put on this is because the Missouri Chamber of Commerce came out with their study. They talked to all the businesses that are in the state of Missouri. They talked to the businesses that want to come to the state of Missouri, and they asked them, what is your #1 concern? And usually it's about cost of living, IT, good schools. No, we said crime. We will decide whether or not we're staying in the state, or we'll decide whether or not we'll come to the state. It's got to do something about public safety and crime. And that's why this task force was put together, and we'll be working with the governor's office as well. I'm very excited because there are many ways and directions we can go. I've already pulled out, I mean, I don't want to see another study. We've had so many studies, peer report, it's all there. There are so many things we can do, we know what to do. That's why I'm looking forward to serving on this task force, and that's why I'm looking forward to be standing there in December, letting you all know what legislation we came up to help our state when it comes to crime and public safety. So I can talk all night if I want to. You all can sit here, but I want to make sure I talk about something that kind of went along the same lines of what we're here for. We're here about public safety and crime. So I thank you all very much. I will be here if you want to talk to me afterwards, and I'll turn it over to Alderman Oldenburg. Thank you.
Real quick. Wow, 82 minutes in. So there's one big thing that I want to plug tonight, and it has to do with public safety, but also a prolific problem in the second police district and throughout the city is illegal dumping and dumping of tires, trash, contractors from the county coming in and dumping in alleyways. We've got cameras to start preventing this, but another thing the police asked us to do, I sponsored a bill and it's going to be on August 2nd, primary election, vote yes for Proposition F, F for fine, because we are raising the statutory requirement from $500 to $1,000. Now that coupled with the cameras and additional resources we're getting to the police task force, they call it something different, right? Environmental investigation unit, sorry. It's a trash task force. That fine is critically important to the city council's office. We got to prosecute these folks. And instead of jail time, right, you're going to get jail time for illegal dumping, but you're going to get a $1,000 max fine if you vote yes, and community service. And they hate community service. So these are big deterrents that we can get to these illegal dumpers. So please do some research, give me a call if you have additional questions. Yes, on Proposition F. Chief, you got something to add to that?
There's also a $100 reward for information that leads to an arrest.
$100 reward if you give a tip that leads to arrest. See, we're making money tonight. Thank you, Chief. Real quick, I wanted to say tomorrow the city's budget passes. A lot of good things in there, some things that had to be compromised on. One thing of note is that ward capital was fully funded in this budget cycle. That always doesn't happen. And why that's important is because ward capital is utilized that we can fix sidewalks, we can fix resurface roads, right? We can make improvements into Francis Park. So it's very important. So tomorrow we'll have the go. So I think I put this out in my news blast. If you need a sidewalk fixed, if you think your alley is in deplorable condition, or there's a street that needs to get serviced, please email me and we can consult with the street department. This is a problem that we never had in the city. We actually have a lot of money now for capital improvements. The downside of that is we have a capacity issue. The street department can't get to everything. So there's probably a couple of years out before we can resurface, repave alleys, fix sidewalks throughout the entire city. But the hope is that we can get to those. So if you want to send me an email, give me a call, my card's at that table up there. Let me know about the alley, the street, or the sidewalk issue. The sidewalk audit, there's a sidewalk audit taking place citywide next month. But they're going to be in our ward July, the last week of July, doing an entire audit. So if, again, you've got a sidewalk issue in front of your house, let me know, and I want to make sure that you see that, and then we can add that to the list to get fixed. That was all I kind of had. I'll take questions. That's okay? Or no time for questions? I'll take questions. Smart group. Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay, Livingston, I want to invite everybody, thank you for coming. I have one ask. If somebody at the table can take charge, take that petition at the table and the pen and put it in the main table up there for us, that would be great. And please consider signing the petition. If you have any questions, please ask Tom Scheifler, or you can email us at president@SLHNA.com.
Great show. Great show.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
see you, by the way. One thing that was burning in our minds about this was,
Say hi. See you. Oh, hey, thank you so much. Yeah. Yeah, it's great.
that's great.
Well,
Yeah. Really gracious.
Sure. More of these. Married and stuff. I'm right at this. Playing this next few years. Hey, you know, I'm always down to volunteer and help out. Yeah, I didn't know you about the practice study.
So it's,
I can see it. Hey,
Excuse me, I'm gonna shut this down. I just wanted to say hi before I took off.